Okay,
Thank
all
you.
yours, Tracy.
Great. Thank you guys for joining. Good getting in on time so we can get started. Anybody who's joining that's not already unmuted, if you could just mute yourself as you come on, and if you have a question, you can go ahead and unmute and ask at that time. That would be great since we're recording the call. Thanks so much for dropping into creating a high-performing team. We're picking up where we were last time. So we're going to get right into the material and keep going here. So lessons in today's objectives for the topic are determining a negotiation strategy and negotiating project agreements. We're also going to organize around team strengths and support team task accountability. And topic C here, over here. All right. So we have enablers again. So enablers for this one are analyze the bounds of the negotiation for the agreement, assess priorities and determine ultimate objectives or objectives, verify the objective or objectives of the agreement and make sure that they're met, determine a negotiation strategy, and participate in the agreement negotiations.
Hey Tracy, just FYI, you're coming in really kind of faint. I can hear you, but just barely. I don't know about everybody else. Yeah.
Okay. If you want to tell us
better.
entertaining for a second, let me change out my headset, or is that's okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, so we are going to pop in and talk about the deliverables. So in this category, one of the deliverables is going to be the service level agreement. We have the performance report, resource calendars, and go live blackout. And with those are the tools, the negotiation skills, expert judgment, and lessons learned. So we'll be seeing these things on and off throughout the entire class. All right. In negotiation, we have negotiations and they're discussions that are aimed at reaching an agreement. Documents that might be included are a statement of work or major deliverables, a schedule with milestones and dates, performing expectations, pricing and payment terms, inspection, quality requirements, and acceptance criteria, warranty and future support, incentives or penalties, insurance and performance bonds, subcontractor approvals, terms and conditions, change request handling, and termination clauses and dispute resolution. Now that was a whole lot of everything on here, and I'm sure it doesn't include, it's not all inclusive, but we want to get as much as we can on the slide. And I didn't do an introduction at the beginning. Matt DeLuca, who taught the last class, is on, and I'm Tracy Vega. I'm on. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it over in the chat to Matt. He'll answer your questions so we don't miss anything as we're going along. Am I still cutting in and out? Is that what I'm seeing up there?
Yes, you are.
A little bit.
Okay. Bear with me one second. I'm going to try to change out my headset.
If you want to change out your headset, I'll go over this a little bit. Now, just an FYI for everybody here, in the last class, we talked a lot about the team itself, and we talked about negotiations within the team and our own contracts with each other to do the work. These negotiations, these agreements, these contracts that we're talking about here are with the client, the folks who we are going to be doing the work with, or with folks who are when we talk about contracts, we talk about buyers and sellers. The buyers are the people who buy the work, and the sellers are the people who are selling the work or providing the work. So like subcontractors, those agreements might be, hey, you agree to do this for us for this amount of money, that kind of stuff. Whereas some of the other things like statement of work or major deliverables, we might be making an agreement with the customer saying, hey, we agree to deliver these for you, just like the subcontractor agreed to deliver stuff for us. And then terms and conditions are additional pieces of that those contracts. Kind of sometimes they make more. They're more important, almost more important than some of the actual contract language. So anyway, are you back here now, Tracy?
I am.
You are. Okay. Yes, it is.
Oh, awesome. Okay. All right. So next we have service level agreements, and we use this term a lot even in AT&T. SLA or service level agreement. That's a contract between a service provider, whether it be internal or external, and the end user that describes the level of service expected from the service provider. Pretty self-explanatory, but if you have a question, give us a shout.
So just an FYI, all the service level agreements, like you probably see those sometimes here at AT&T, about how fast we respond to issues, downtime, things like that, mean time between failure type of things. Those are all service level agreement type of things that you would have. So when you have a contract, you're saying, hey, we'll deliver this in this amount of time with this kind of performance and these kinds of things, and those are covered in our service level agreements.
All right. So prioritization techniques to determine objectives. So a product backlog, an ordered list of user-centric requirements that the team maintains for the product. Prioritization techniques include the Kano model, what I believe we pronounce as the Moscow analysis, prepared comparison analysis, and the 100 points method. And Matt, is that something that you want to give a little bit more on?
We don't have to go into that too much. I don't believe, Luke, were those on any of this stuff actually questions on these? I mean, these are what's the word I'm looking for? This is how we prioritize our backlog for the product. So when they say we want this, and they have to rattle off 1,000 different things, but these 10 things are what we are really important in. And the prioritization techniques, there's just examples here. There's other examples as well on how you prioritize your backlog. Essentially, you just have to know that you prioritize your backlog. Again, Luke is here. I don't know if you remember if they had a question about a specific a model that they might have used for prioritization.
Yeah, they didn't have it on mine, but as Matt said, these are all methods that, the project owner is in charge of the backlog and prioritizing it, and these are different ways where the priority goes with what deliverables they want. So these could show up. I would have a good understanding of it, like Moscow's must-haves, should-haves, could-haves, would-haves, and then these are different ones. Have a general understanding of them.
Thank you. All right, so now we have performance report. The project performance metrics can include the percentage of work complete, quality and technical performance metrics, start and finish of scheduled activities, change requests, defects, and actual cost and duration. And change requests, I know are going to not come up a lot, but can come up a lot in a project. That's something that you'll see almost in every chapter as we're going through. Work performance data is integrated and contextualized to include or to generate decisions, raise issues, actions, and awareness. And then agile projects include completed and accepted stories, product backlog progress, and comparison of stories delivered against and to the iteration plans. If you guys have any questions, because I know we're going through a lot of information, just feel free to raise your hand or just ask a question. All right, expert judgment.
This is Anthony. I got a question. The change request, does that have something to do with the baseline? There's a relationship with the baseline, I would think, right?
It does. Essentially, we gauge our performance from against the baseline. We talk about it more in earned value management, which apparently now we don't have to worry so much about the formulas that you used to have to worry about that. But essentially, work performance data, like for instance, actual costs and durations, those are really important in earned value management. So we have a projected cost, we have a projected schedule. We expect to be here, and we expect it to have cost this much money, but we spent this much, and it took us this long to get here. Or we're at this point, but we're not as far as we thought we were, or we're ahead of where we thought we were. So that's all compared against the baseline. So when you start the project, it's important to have your baseline, and then you're going to primarily your performance. That's how you measure your performance. Agile, it's not quite as simple as that. Agile, the baseline, you don't really have like I don't want to call it a baseline, but you have a velocity, and you're trying to achieve that velocity when you're going through projects. we'll cover that more with the Agile. I think on the 28th is the class where we're actually going to be talking more about Agile. But
Okay.
yeah, that baselines are important.
Yeah, real quick. I know we'll be covering it most likely, but where do we define the baseline? Which
Well, it depends on what you're baselining. Cost, you'll be baselining out of the gate. And then again, you might be changing your baseline too. That's where the change request comes in the waterfall projects. How you deal with that with Agile is a little different. And then your schedule is another baseline that you're looking for. So those are the two big baselines that we're looking at. Scope, you could also baseline your scope, you know, when you get your requirements and everybody signs off on the requirements, this is your scope, right? This is your scope baseline that you'll be working with. And then as soon as you deliver those things, you say, well, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this, and you're checking these off of your list of scope. So that with your backlog would essentially be that.
In short, what you're saying is that each project management process may have a baseline, right?
Well, it depends on what you're calling by. We have a lot of processes that we do as project management. I mean, I don't think we have a baseline stakeholder register. I don't think we have a baseline set of risk. We don't have a baseline set for a lot of things. But we have a lot of things that we do. We do create a baseline for, and almost anything that you have to have people sign off on and agree to, it's a baseline. So
okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just also add you'll learn this as you go along, like when the baseline is formed after you analyze, after you collaborate with other stakeholders, after you come up with what other management plan you are working on, either schedule or cost management plan. Then you determine from that information, from that data, and what the stakeholders want, what that baseline will be.
Thanks, Luke. Okay, so expert judgment. For expert judgment, it's provided based upon expertise of the application in the area, the knowledge area, the discipline, the industry, as appropriate for the activity being performed. So such expertise may be provided by a group or a person with specialized knowledge, skills, experience, and training. Expert judgment comes up a lot, and again, as an input, you see it in a lot of different categories throughout the PMBOK as you're reading through. For example, people from other areas of the organization might be an expert, consultants, stakeholders, professional and technical associations.
And as project managers, we are the experts in some of this as well. And estimators, you might see estimators out there who are professional estimators. The people who are doing the work when you're doing the estimating, those are the people who know how long it's going to take them to. They know how long it's going to take to do it. So they would be your experts in that. If you have to get other things from outside, if you're building a building, you may have to consult a structural engineer, would be a specific expert to determine whether the load is correct on this floor or whatever in your architectural design. So we have lots of subject matter experts are everywhere, and so just know that that's expert. They're using expert judgment to make decisions or inform a decision.
We have somebody in the background there. If they could just mute for us, would be awesome. All right, so next we have negotiation strategy. So negotiations for the exact parameters of a contract are generally driven by the procurement manager. The project manager and the project teams may engage as part of negotiations. In the traditional project approach, an important objective is a clear designation of the project's intended deliverables and how they'll be measured and how they'll be compensated. And you'll get into that a little bit further on as well. In the agile approach, the exact deliverables will be a variable as the customer modifies, adds, reprioritizes the items and puts them back in the backlog, so they're clearly delineated ways to ensure agreed performance levels that must be defined. That was a big mouthful, but you will see that come up again. So what we were talking about earlier, right before you guys jumped on, is the new version of how they're laying this out is a little more in set in context as the way the project actually unfolds versus how you read the PMBOK.
And
All right.
just for FYI, that last bullet, the agile approach, that's going to probably be important here as well. And just remember that the exact deliverables in agile are achieved through an iterative approach in demos. We do this, they look at it, they say, yes, change this, do this, do this, do this, and you go back to the drawing board, or they accept it out of the gate. So, but their approvals are going to determine your exact deliverables. Sorry, go ahead.
Kind of like a honey-do list.
Kind of, yeah.
All right, so a lessons learned register. Every project has a document that's used to record the knowledge gained during the project so that it can be used in the current project and entered into the lessons learned repository. This is also one of those things that can be considered expert material, expert judgment when you're using it later on down the road. You might have a project where you've got the same people involved. It looks kind of similar, that you can go back and visit the register to get some information that will help you with the current plan that the current project that you're working on. An effective project team should also regularly review it for its performance and identify lessons learned and identify specific improvements that will improve the team's overall efficiency and effectiveness. Agile teams schedule a ceremony that's called a retrospective at the end of each iteration to identify all potential issues and identify all potential solutions and improve the processes the team uses to improve the overall performance. A lot of improves.
And,
all right.
And just an FYI too, for well, actually not just agile, but for any lessons learned, it's not just a matter of what we could have done better, but hey, this worked really well. So as we want to know what we did right, not only what we did wrong and what we need to change, but what we really want to stick with too. So just an FYI on that one.
And Matthew, related to that previous slide, I remember encountering a question from the examwizard.com. I just can't recall if I got it right or not. Lessons learned seem to be done by either a stakeholder or a sponsor, maybe the stakeholder. Is there a specific project role that the lessons learned?
No, everybody in
by?
Agile, everybody does lessons learned. Everybody participates in it. In Agile, the Scrum team is usually it's a Scrum team that's together for a retrospective, but product owners can be there as well. Everybody is responsible for lessons learned, not just a particular person in Agile.
And for predictive, is that different? So agile would be for everybody to write the lessons learned, but for predictive, is it not for everybody?
Well, actually, in predictive, it is. Again, I think pretty much I mean, you might have somebody who leads a session to gather lessons learned, and as a project manager, I usually document all that stuff. But it's not because I know everything that went right and everything that went wrong. I am reaching out to everyone to get information about that. So, you know, in predictive, you might want to say it's the project manager, but again, it's really everybody has to contribute to those lessons learned.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Great question. Thanks. Okay. So the go live blackout times. The blackout times occur when the deliverables are handed over for implementation. We suspend certain changes. Well, it's not certain changes. We suspend changes. Reduce the risk as the solution is released to the customer. Go live occurs at the end of the project timeline, and the blackout times may be negotiated in advance based on the overall project schedule and timeline. In an agile approach, there may be numerous releases of aspects of the solution over the project's timeline and blackout times. And blackout times, if needed, will be negotiated as the project approaches the release threshold. Pretty simple, unless anybody has some questions there. All right. Guidelines to participate in negotiations. Project managers and the project team members will often be engaged throughout the project negotiation process. Project teams can suggest or identify deliverables and milestones, risks and issues, expert judgment about problem definition and solution approaches, practices for how the project will be operated, traditional versus waterfall versus agile, and that type of thing, and resource requirements. This is another one of the topics coming up that we'll be reading that you'll want to kind of doubt. I actually, Luke, did you get a lot going on with this in the test for negotiations?
In regards to what?
You know, it used to be a lot of definitions around that. Is it just now more, were they looking for definitions there, or they just, did those
No,
items cover the milestones? And
yeah, I mean, they're not definitions. Like milestones, they're a lot of the high level stuff, milestones, high level risk, high level milestones, high level deliverables, all go in the project charter. Everything, like when that's another, identifier when in a question, when you hear high level, that a lot of time, most of the time associates with the project charter. And then when you get more detailed into like the project management plans that happen after the project charter is authorized.
great, thank you. Okay, project agreement objectives. An important part of the project agreement is the clarity on how the retrospective parties will report and verify that the objectives of the project are met. In a traditional project, each deliverable is identified and object acceptance criteria for each are identified. In an agile project, since the actual deliverables will vary based on the product backlog, will vary as product backlog is added to, reprioritized, and so forth, each story needs to have a clearly identified acceptance criteria approved by the customer. The project may also specify a definition of a DON for the project, releases, iterations, and users for the stories. All right. I'll pop up here to negotiations. So we're on topic D, empowering the team. All right, so the enablers for empowering the team, we organize around team strengths. One of the things about a project team is you'll notice that not everybody has the same strength, and that's done pretty much by design. In the project, the best thing that you can do is to have multiple people with multiple project levels. Each person has a different level of expertise that they're bringing into the team. That's what makes for a great project team. That way everybody doesn't have the same ideas all the time. Support team accountability, evaluate demonstration of task accountability, determine and bestow levels of decision-making and authority. So those are some of the enablers coming into the empower team and member stakeholders. All right, so our deliverable for this group is decisions and estimates. And the tools for those are going to be team decision-making tools, Fist of 5, Roman voting, polling, planning poker, dot voting, and retrospective. Pop up here, we're going to cover those a little bit. All right, so this is the SWOT chart. So team strength, when forming teams, it's critical to understand the skills and competencies needed from the members to perform their work and produce deliverables. As a team progresses, leverage the team members' skills to improve team performance. Identify team strengths and weaknesses to organize around the team strengths. So the SWOT chart, you guys, I'm sure you've seen strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is just something I would kind of remember. I don't think you have to memorize, but just you want to be familiar with it when you might see it somewhere along the lines again on your test. Team decision-making tools. So these are the things that you come together in advance. Identify how the team will make decisions together. How will they resolve conflicts when a disagreement arises? As the initial team charter is produced, the team needs to address decision-making and conflict resolution in advance. For example, it might be highly desirable to seek a consensus, but the team may want to identify how they'll respond when a consensus can't be reached. And I know that we talked about this last week. One option may be to decide in advance to take the highest estimate if there is a persistent disagreement. All right, so now we have team accountability. Now this is going to be not the same as the RACI chart. This is a little bit different, but we encourage team members to self-organize in determining the work that needs to be done, how to perform the work, who should perform it. And in the agile approach, the team commits to performing the work in an iteration, which we've mentioned several times. The Gantt charts and the Kanban boards promote visibility and collaboration. So you can see, looking at the reports, where, just as an example, they have a kind of blocked out what's going to come next, and you see the waterfall thing going on here, just to see what's what. Just kind of visual, give you an idea what's going on. All right, so in guidelines to evaluate demonstration of task accountability, determine how task accountability will be managed and tracked. In a work breakdown structure, tasks to produce the deliverables identified, preferably by the teams will be performing the work. When a work breakdown structure dictionary or work package is produced, each of the relevant tasks and assignees is identified, tracked, and managed. In an agile approach, task identification is tracked, and tracking is generally handled by the teams themselves as part of the planning, part of the iteration planning. Sorry, I kind of stumbled through that one. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and we'll go back and talk about that for a second. You're good? All right. Retrospective. All right, so we're going to set the stage. And then once we set the stage, we do check-in activities to engage the team. Then we gather and we share data. This is a good time to look at team performance metrics, the earned value analysis, which we mentioned earlier, generate insights. So what's working? Is there challenges? Can we analyze the problems? And then make decisions. We want to agree on 1 to 2 improvements or changes to try to in the subsequent iteration. And then close. What's the new information, appreciation, thank yous? Make sure we close it out. And actually, Tom, I think we're moving along a little too fast here.
That's okay. We can, if people have questions, when we get to the next section here, we can stop and
Gotcha.
take questions.
All right. All right, so we have guidelines to determine and bestow levels of decision-making authority. Tasks that should be identified, planned, and managed as much as possible by the team members themselves. Estimates should be done by the teams performing the work. They're the ones that are the experts, so they can give you the best estimates. And empower the teams to drive their own improvement. Pretty self-explanatory.
You're going to get a lot of these questions on the exam. It's all about servant leadership. So I would definitely read over that stuff about empowering the team, about, helping the team out, progress, if you're training it, how to train team members. And even if you train them so much that they become so good that they're actually leave the team to go to another team, you encourage that. You don't try and keep them on the team.
Good point. Thank you. All right, so some of the learning goals here are determining project team member requirements. Because when you're bringing in resources for the team, when you're looking for skill sets, you want to make sure that you have people that have the right set of skills that you want to bring in. You don't want to just bring in somebody because they were a project manager or they were on another project, so you automatically assume that they're the right person for the job. You want to make sure that they have the requirements that you're looking for. Appraising team skills and maintain knowledge transfer. So we want to always have a log of what we've got going on, things that we found to be important, things that we found that work, things that didn't work. And then we want to collectively define the project ground rules based on context, such as organizational rules and team dynamics. Determine a negotiation strategy and negotiate agreements. Organize around team strengths and support team task accountability. Ensure team members and stakeholders are adequately trained. Continually evaluate the effectiveness of the virtual team member engagement and reach consensus and support for the outcome parties of the agreement. All right, we're coming into now we have the reflective questions. Do we want to go over those? I might have lost time. I lost everything.
Well, No, that's okay. We can ask right now. Does anybody want to talk about that as far as important, why you think it's important to identify the document, identify and document the project stakeholders? This is probably more so from the last chapter that we covered. But I mean, why do we need to know who the stakeholders are and document them? Anybody have any ideas about that? Anybody want to?
You know who's responsible for what, and who's like a subject matter expert in what area? Because a lot of people, if they know a little bit, they could just talk enough to sound like experts, but they don't really represent that area. I get that a lot.
That's
care,
important.
So.
That's important. And more along that lines is while you're working on the project, something's not working right. You know, who do we talk to? You need to know who those people are. You know, if you're working on a project here at AT&T with multiple applications, who's the guy that's responsible for this particular application? Who's our point of contact for that? You know, it's important, especially for that kind of thing, but also when you're dealing with your with the owners are the clients. You know, who are the clients? So you definitely want to know who they are and what they're responsible for. I mean, you definitely have to have them documented in what they do and who's responsible for what. So that's important. That just to kind of go along with what Jessica was saying there. So it's a share situation when you're required to communicate a difficult message about the project to a sponsor or a top level executive. What approach and communication method did you take? Instead of answering that question, why do we want to know how we approach somebody who's further up the chain than we are? You know, we're talking to our peers. It's one thing when we're talking to our boss's boss. It's another thing. When we talk to them, what's some of the stuff that we have to take into consideration, and how do we know to take that stuff into consideration? As an example, if you're working on a project, when you gathered your stakeholders at the beginning and you found out that you sat down and started talking to folks, and you found out that this particular VP is he's very risk averse. Okay, so when you make your presentations to them, you want to hedge all your bets. You know, when you're talking to him, you want to say, well, we have a mitigation plan for this, we have a mitigation plan for that, we have a mitigation plan for this, and you have all these options in your basket, as opposed to a VP who's very has a big appetite for risk. You know, it's like, hey, you know what? We don't need to do all that kind of stuff. I mean, if it comes down to it that we need to have those backup plans, we'll develop them then. But in the meantime, I'm comfortable with the level of risk that we have. So back into that whole stakeholder register when you're keeping track of what the folks are and what they do, and I try to capture as much of that kind of information as I can when I start the project. So does anybody else have any enlightening why we might want to know about, or how we communicate with folks that are our sponsor, our top level executive, the VPs? Any other examples of
I mean, if you're not getting support that was promised for a project, you may need to escalate within that
there
team.
you go. And how do you approach a VP to say, hey, your folks aren't delivering what I need them to deliver, you know?
Well, I always try to bring, with the problem, I try to bring us solutions or what's required and have backup documentation and just have, have all my facts aligned. And it's also important, like you were saying, like kind of knowing your audience, like, is it an executive that likes a list of items, or is it another person that wants, a PowerPoint presentation with pictures, less words, more pictures, or something of that nature? I mean, it may just help you, get your point across in something that they're comfortable, in a manner that they're comfortable seeing and expecting to see, for whatever the issues may be.
Anything else when you're talking about that, when you're going up the chain and you're you're asking for them to get folks to deliver what they're promised to deliver, kind of thing. Any other things that we want to be looking at when we're talking about that?
Hi, Matthew. This is Anjanette. I noticed that some dealing with higher level management, some are more numbers oriented. They want to know, well, you know, what does it look like in dollars and cents? And then you have others that, you know, they're engineers. So you can kind of get into the weeds as far as the details of the construction project and the things that may be holding you back, or the things that you may have to spend more capital on. And so those things are very good to know as well. The audience is very important.
That's true too. And that's, again, that's knowing your stakeholder and knowing about them and how to approach them and what they like and what they don't like to hear about. I guess the thing that I was actually looking for was the transparency. When you need something, you can't go to your VP and say, these guys aren't doing their job while you're kind of not discussing the problem that we just gave it to them because we sat on it for a while or something like that. We need to be transparent. That's kind of important. That's very important to Agile, is the trust and the transparency out there. So those are things that we also want to look at when we're approaching them. Definitely want to make sure that they have all the facts when you're asking for something or demanding something. Okay. I'm sorry. Somebody else wanted to add something here? Okay. How about if we, anybody else have any questions about any of the other material that we covered already in the first half here? No questions, not at all, nothing. Why don't we take 10 minutes? I have 5:40 right now. We'll be back at let's say 5:50 or 10 minutes from now. You're in a different time zone, and then we will tackle it from there. In the meantime, I'll be on the call. So if you guys want to go ahead and grab some coffee or tea or soda or water or whatever, take a health break. You can go ahead and do that, and I'll be here to answer questions. Tracy, I don't know if you're going to go grab something too or not, but I'll be here. So.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
Okay. So, any questions while we're kind of taking a break here? Or does everybody just want to take a break?
Can we go back to the retrospective? I apologize. I had a conference call that lasted 15 minutes over its allotted time because they insisted on continuing.
So when I'm going to go to the...
Can we go over the retrospectives?
We can. I'm trying to find the slide here with the retrospective on it. In the meantime, do you have a question about the retrospective in particular?
Yeah, I was trying to get to that page as well. Sorry.
I think it's slide 26.
I just have different thing here.
When you say close, that was the only one that I was confused on. You're saying close to the retrospective activity, not just the whole entire project, which we use close and start and charter on many different levels within the whole project management, and they tend to get a little confused in my brain. So I'm just trying to keep them separated.
Okay, well, I guess I'm kind of lost where you're talking about now when you're talking about close. And we have retrospectives happen regularly in Agile. I mean, you don't do a retrospective and then you're closed. I mean, you'll do a kind of a closeout retrospective, but you should be doing them at least probably after every iteration, or more frequently than that even.
Okay, because my Agile team that I have, and mind you, they told us we needed to switch to Agile and said, here, figure it out.
Oh, yeah, I understand that's probably familiar to a lot of people.
Yep. So, we came up with our standard and how we ticket and how we have a weekly call that we go over what we would like to accomplish over the sprint. And normal sprints are only 2 weeks, but because of the type of work that we do, ours goes 6 weeks. And at
Oh,
the
that's a
end of
long
this,
sprint, but yeah, I don't know if I want to get into that part of it, um,
it's
but
yep,
yeah,
it's drawing updates. It's not actual coding, or our projects and stuff are all waterfall. They are 100% waterfall and should not be agile at all. But we can make some agile adjustments to our waterfall project to help accommodate that and deal with the AT&T want to change over to agile. That's what I had to do. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what I'm really supposed to be doing in these meetings. So
well, and when you have your retrospective, the retrospective is about improving the team. The goal is to improve the team, to make the team work better. So like when you just had mentioned, one of the things I heard you say was what you want to accomplish next week or whatever. That's really more along the lines of your sprint planning. That's kind of what we want to do. This is kind of the objective. But unless you're saying, next week we want to be able to increase our velocity by communicating better. That would be something that came up in a retrospective, probably because somebody said, hey, we're not communicating that well. I find that I'm asking these questions and nobody's answering them. So, we come in here, we have these meetings, and I ask questions and I get no answers from anyone. Nobody's even throwing anything up against the wall to see what sticks, much less, having good ideas. And the good ideas don't always come. That's kind of the problem. But retrospectives it's you trying to make things better, and you come into the retrospective and you say, hey, this worked really great, can we do this all the time? Because I find that this has actually been helping me out a lot. Or I'm doing this and it's mostly working, but can we tweak it this way, or can we tweak it that way? Or I'm finding that we're doing really crappy on our estimating our story points. We're coming into these things and we're saying, it's 6 story points and it's taken us an entire sprint to do these particular things. Maybe we have to do a better job of estimating or decomposing stories down into smaller things so that they're easier to estimate. Those are the kinds of things that you're talking about in retrospective, and those are just examples. There's a billion different things, an infinite number of things you could be talking about in a retrospective, but it's to improve the performance of the team, not so much to say, I know we should have delivered this, or this is what I want to deliver next week, or this is what we delivered this week. I mean, it's what we delivered or what we want to deliver isn't really retrospective material. Why we didn't deliver it could be, hey, why did we do this? Why didn't we do this? And what can we do to do better next time? That would be retrospective material. I don't know, Luke, if you have any other insight into that, but are other folks that have done agile projects and had worked with really good agile teams and had retrospectives where people were constantly coming up with good ideas, or maybe not, but they were constantly coming up with ideas and they end up finding out, hey, that didn't work either, that didn't work either, that didn't work either. It's kind of, those things happen too. I mean, it's all towards making your team better. Sometimes things don't work out and you just eliminated, the Thomas Edison thing. I found another way not to not build the light bulb. So
okay.
does that help?
Yes.
And retrospectives, again, lessons learned, retrospectives. If you're doing, it's all terminology here, but at the end of the day, it's all the same type of thing. We're learning to do better at what we do.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have 4 more minutes before we get started back up again. Other questions about the material we covered? Everybody's good with expert judgment. Everybody's good with negotiation stuff. Contracts. Contracts were big on my exam, which was not the new exam. I don't know how our contracts fall on the new test, but
I'll just add to what Matt was saying. He's definitely, everything he says is correct about, retrospectives. It's kind of like you're reflecting back on what you just did, for any issues that might have come up, the team coming up with solutions and how to improve things. And then you have like the sprint planning meeting, or sprint or iterative planning meeting, where you're going into that sprint or iteration, and then how do you plan the deliverables in that 2 to 4 week span. And then you have a daily stand up, which is a 15-minute stand up every single day, kind of like a state of the union, like status report about where everybody's at and what they're working on that day. So those are the three that I would certainly focus on.
Those are the ceremonies, the agile ceremonies.
Yeah.
Stand up, sprint planning, and retrospective.
And retrospectives could happen at any point, and anybody on the team can ask for a retrospective. It doesn't just have to be the Scrum Master or the project manager or project manager. Anybody can ask for one.
Okay.
Lucas, with the new testing, are you finding that it's more agile focused than waterfall, or?
Yes, it is
Okay.
definitely more agile, correct. I was certainly no predictive based on the processes. Change management or change requests certainly are a big part of it. What goes into the each project management plan, who can request a change request, which is anybody. You'll get more into this, but definitely more agile, at least for me and everybody I've talked to.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody's good with the performance data and performance reports. Everybody's familiar with what performance stuff is. You're comparing against the baseline, or in agile, it's a completed and accepted stories versus your product backlog progress stuff. Any other questions on that? Your velocity would be another performance thing that you're looking at. Velocity, and I don't know if they cover that on the exam or not. Velocity varies between teams. Two teams could have the same backlog, but have completely different velocities for a number of reasons. One reason might be that their story point velocity, they weight their story points differently. So one team has the same set of tasks, and it's 600 story points, and somebody else may have the same task and it's 300 story points, because that's the way they did it. They get one team does 600 story points in a certain amount of time, and the other one does 300, but they delivered the exact same thing. So that's one way you got to look at those velocities. They're meant for the team, not necessarily for the people that you report up to. The other thing too is that you might have a team who has that doesn't work as fast. They might not deliver as many story points because they are weighted the same, but they're just not as adept at the work yet.
And you'll get a few questions on, sorry, Matt, you'll get a few questions on that too. Like, if somebody's falling behind, what do you do? You never kick them off the team. You always try and coach them up. You always try and give them the resources, the training that they might need. Or, you'll get to you'll do, sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. Swarming, you can swarm or mob, the actual iteration, which is more team members helping out that one team member that is having difficulty on a certain story point, and then you just work together to deliver that deliverable.
So that was on the exam, swarming and mobbing?
Yep.
Oh, good. And just FYI, that's actually very good. That's a very good process sometimes. People get assigned stories and they work on them, and then sometimes this is part of that whole transparency thing. I initially, and even now when I start on a new team, sometimes you start the project, and your first stand-up call, they're like, they're working on this, and they're working on this, and they're working on this today, and then tomorrow they're working on the same thing, and the next day they're working on the same thing, and sometimes you have they're not telling you they have any roadblocks, but they're clearly not making any progress either, and sometimes you just have, that's the transparency thing. That might be one of your retrospective things is, hey, if you're not solving your problem right away, or you don't have a solution to your problem right away, you reach out and do that. And that's one of the almost every project I work on, that is one of those retrospective items that that you start to see happen early on, where people they don't want to say they haven't made progress. So when you're saying, what did you do yet? What did you do yesterday? It's the same thing they did the day before and the day before and the day before. That's where your expert judgment comes in, and to kind of to weed those things out. And a lot of people, it's not that they're trying to be evasive or they're not trying to be transparent. It's they're not thinking it in that terms. They're just thinking, I know I can solve this problem, but it's still eluding me. And it's day one goes by and day two goes by, and so we do that. We mob those problems, because sometimes it's not just you. Sometimes it is, but you'll be working with folks who are more experienced or less experienced, and you'll see those things happen. But sometimes it's just you haven't dealt with that problem before. The project I just came off of, it was a lot of Perl script, which nobody on our team has worked on in like 20 years. So it requires a lot of different ideas and different people coming in and looking at it, and that's what you do. You mob that story. Okay, I actually have 4 minutes past when we were supposed to get started again. So do you want to keep going, Tracy?
I would be happy to.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you keep going here then. So let's jump right back in again.
Okay. So our next piece is we have lessons of, I'm going to just reshoot this. All right. So creating a high-performing team is the second part of the first. Wow. Okay, so we're going to ensure team members and stakeholders are adequately trained. We're going to continually evaluate the effectiveness of the virtual team member assignment, the team member engagement. All right, so some of our enablers are determine that the required competencies and elements of training, determine training options based on training needs, allocate resources for training, ensure training occurs, and measure training outcomes. Pretty simple stuff there. All right, so some of our deliverables and tools for this section. The deliverable for training and mentoring, training and mentoring plan is a deliverable. The tool for that one would be a training gap analysis. Training cost estimates, the tool for that would be training. A training calendar, the tool for that would be pairing and mentoring. And then we have the training assessment and certifications. Okay, so required competencies. Identify the required competencies, the first aspect of developing and executing a training plan. Competencies can include knowledge, skills, and other attributes. Different stakeholders obviously will have different training needs. Team members themselves may require specific training on the customer's business, culture, desired outcomes, and project of context, or the project's context. All right, so elements of training. An activity in which team members acquire new or enhanced skills, knowledge, or attitudes. So provided to teams and small groups and individuals, covers management, technical, administrative topics. It can be delivery models that include instructor-led from classroom, virtual classrooms, self-paced e-learning, document reviews, interactive simulations, on-the-job training. And I'm sure this isn't not an all-inclusive list, so I'm sure there's more there. You guys stop us if we have any questions as we're going along, because there's a lot to cover. All right, guidelines to determine required competencies. What knowledge will be required for the stakeholder to perform as expected with the new solution? What skills or hands-on experience are needed to learn to be able to demonstrate readiness to carry out the work using the solution? What level of buy-in to the solution has been given by the stakeholder, and what aspects of the training need to be employed to develop the support for the solution? What modalities of training should be offered, and what are the relative costs for those different approaches? Have any questions there yet? I know I see some chat questions going on. You guys are getting answered.
This is Steve. I'll ask, and it's probably a minor detail, but at the beginning of these sections, you have an E.C.O reference. can you let me know what that means? I'm sorry if I've missed that somewhere.
No, you did not miss that. And give me 1/2 second because I do know the answer to that because I have the same question myself.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Yep.
I believe it's the exam content outline.
Thank you very much.
And,
Just so I
and
know where to
there's
reference
actually, there is a document on the PMI website that you can download that's got that in it. You don't have to be a member to get that. You can go there. It's a free document.
You can log in and search it and download it from there.
So
I will do that.
What is it called?
It's
the
called
exam
the
content
exam
outline.
content. Yeah.
So
the ECO.
from PMI, sorry, you just search for ECO.
ECO, yep, it'll come up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good question. All right, training and mentoring plan. Training should be done as close to the point of solution as possible. Scheduling is critical to avoid delaying the overall solution deployment. Perform a gap analysis to identify missing knowledge, skills, and required attributes. A training plan for team members can include improvement in competencies or possibly certification to benefit the project. All right.
So before you go too far on that one, if you can go back again real fast, just go back. Yeah. So when they say that training should be done as close to the point of the solution as possible, what we're talking about here is, like if, for instance, if you're going to a particular technology next year and they start sending you training material today, okay, you're a year out from actually using that stuff. So that's really not the best way to do it. You want to get it as close to the point of the solution as possible. So when you're going to start using it, you want people to learn it and then just hit the ground running with the material, which is the second point. Scheduling is critical to avoid delaying the overall solution because you don't want to wait until you actually start before you start training people on a particular technology or whatever. So those two things are essentially saying that, hey, we want to, you don't want to schedule it so far in advance that by the time they actually hit the material or hit the technology and they start needing to use it, they learned it a year ago. You don't want that. And you don't want them to hit it and find out that, okay, we need you guys to learn how to do this while you're trying to do the project. So that's what you're looking at on that. And then the gap analysis is pretty simple. I think that's pretty straightforward. You're missing what do people need to know versus what do they already know, close in the gap. And then the training plan for team members to close those gaps. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries, thank you. All right, so training options. So we have virtual instructor-led training. These will all be familiar to you guys. So basically live online instructor-led training through a virtual meeting or simulator. Simulated on hands, labs are often used in the option. Self-paced learning, e-learning content made available to students online and generally consumed using a browser. Self-paced learning, again, a benefit of the self-paced approach is the scalability of the solution to a large number of potential students. And then, of course, we have document reviews. For simple knowledge transfer, sharing relevant documents may be sufficient. So this is not anything that everybody's not already familiar with. All right, training cost estimates. As part of the schedule and budget, consider the costs associated to the training the team project and customer stakeholders. Some of your costs might include content creation and editing costs, content hosting and delivery costs, instructional costs, courseware printing and distribution, venue costs, and logistics costs. I'm sure that's not an all-inclusive list either. So a training calendar. A training calendar is what a project manager needs to publish and support a specific calendar of training dates and locations. The schedule also needs to be published to the customer stakeholders. You are going to create a mechanism for registration and sending confirmation messages, provide a class roster as a way to capture the signature of attendees, and manage the training schedule and timing to avoid any delay to the project's delivery timeline. It's pretty self-explanatory, but does anybody have any questions there? No? Okay. All right. Pairing and mentoring. All right, pairing customer stakeholders together enables them to reinforce the.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
No
just a
problem. Go
second.
ahead.
I was reading the line, and it says training is often an activity taking place towards the end of your project timeline.
Right, that's what we were just talking about. Where sometimes you have the training, you don't want to train somebody a year in advance on a product or something that they're getting ready to, that they'll be using a year from now. Well, they're actually still trying to plan the project. So you want to make it as close to the time that they're actually going to be doing it as possible.
Okay, as opposed to training the resources to be able to do the project, which is what I've done in the past. Okay, sorry, I'm good.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Okay. Let's see. So pairing customer stakeholders together to enable them to reinforce the learning in each other. Mentoring enables an experienced team member to coach a less experienced team member. Pairing and mentoring fosters team building and collaborative environment. Training focuses on building individual skills to be used in the present. Mentoring helps to develop well-rounded individuals for future through long-term professional relationships between novice and experienced employees. Relationships can be informal, ad hoc, and ones created within the individuals themselves, or might be formally established by the organization who intentionally pair the participants.
So before you go too far, can you go back again on that one? Just I want to kind of we'll talk about that a little bit, the pairing versus the mentoring. We do a lot of we do, like XP does what XP, the extreme programming, it's one of the concepts behind that is pair programming. And it's when they're talking about this, they pair customer stakeholders together, enables them to reinforce the learning in each other. Pair programming, generally speaking, the folks that are working those are equivalents. You know, it's the guys who are about the same knowledge, but they work together to resolve issues. Whereas mentoring, you're taking somebody who is less experienced. So you might have an advanced programmer working with a novice to help them get up to speed, or working with somebody who's kind of in the middle of their development, not kind of towards the end of it. And it's important to do that, especially when you're the different agile methodologies that people use out there. Again, one of them is called extreme programming, and that is pair programming, where you have two developers who are peers. I mean, technical peers. Just kind of an FYI on it. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can go now.
Okay, thanks. All right, baseline and post-training assessments. Baselining provides a technique for measuring the efficacy of the training. Attendees complete a pre-assessment before training. After training, a post-assessment is issued to demonstrate the newly acquired levels of the competence. All right, guidelines to ensure training occurs. So we want to create awareness among the stakeholders about the available training. We want to create invitations to attend the training. Engage the customer management for buy-in and commitment to have their employees attend the training program. Registration needs to include a confirmation notification and reminder before the training. Create a roster for each delivery of the training, and capture signatures to confirm the attendance of the participation in pre or post assessment. All right, certification. Industry certifications demonstrates the knowledge and skills have been gained during training. The location and administration of the certifications exams can vary. They could be delivered directly after the training class, administered at a testing training center with a proctor, delivered online using a webcam proctor. Industry credentials are more portable and can be more desirable by those who hold a certification and future employers, kind of like us going in to be project managers, different ways that you can take the test. All right, so measure training outcomes. Training is ultimately measured by the ability to perform the work needed. Post-assessments and certifications prove knowledge. And the true test of training is demonstrated by applying the knowledge and skills at the time at the workplace. Any questions there? That's pretty much, training is a pretty simple piece of the puzzle there. All right, so again, here come the enablers. So the enablers for this group are examine virtual team member needs.
Hey, Tracy,
Yes.
that's actually the next class. So we're actually finished with the material here. So if we want to go back, we can ask if anybody has any questions about the material so far.
I have a question. I have a question
Sure.
about I'm not sure if it's exactly on the material, but it's more along the lines of the test that you just mentioned, training. Is there any opinion to whether taking the exam is better at an exam center versus doing it at home, or does it not really matter? Does anyone have an opinion on that?
I have heard that I've actually heard kind of both ways. Mostly what I hear is taking the exam at a testing site like Prometrics is a better way to do that. At home, apparently they use an AI, and I've heard lots of problems with that. But I've also heard people that haven't had any issues at all. But like I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, man. I actually took mine at a training center, and if you're not a nervous tester, it's great. But if you're somebody who's nervous, now I don't know where Luke took his, but when I went in, it was kind of the equivalent of feeling like you were going into taken into prison camp, because there are a lot of very strict guidelines that they follow. Nothing to drink, it's 4 hours. You're watching the clock. You can't have anybody. Nothing, you're not wearing anything, you're pulling your sleeves out, you're pulling your pockets out, they have to check your eyeglasses, they provide you with the pencils and that type of thing. So if you have to get up to use the restroom, the clock's still ticking, which I know that applies at home as well too. But I guess what I'm getting at is if you're a good test taker and you don't mind that environment, that would probably be the way to go versus being at home where you could have that possible interruption or glitch where you might get distracted and might have a problem that causes you to not pass due to time.
Hey, Luke, did you take yours at a test center?
I took mine at the test center, exactly what Tracy was saying, because I wanted complete focus and I didn't want any distractions. Also at home, I did not want to take the chance of losing my internet during the test. So
yeah,
that was my biggest fear.
I've heard some pretty bad stories about people looked away for a minute or whatever and the AI kicked them out. So I would recommend taking it at a center. I mean I have heard people that had taken it at home and it went fine. So I just it's all anecdotal for me right now, but the most folks that I've talked to have actually taken it in a center. And again, I remember taking mine at Prometrics, and they tested me they checked me over with a metal detector. And when I got up to go to the restroom, I came back and they had me turn my pockets out and pull my pants leg up so they could see if I had something stuck in my socks. And
yep, same thing
with me. Hit me with the metal detector again, and it's just it's there. Just if you're not planning on cheating and you're not hiding anything, I don't know that it's that stressful. But again, that's me. So just FYI on that. So I recommend taking it at a center. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to, quick question. Where is this PowerPoint deck located? I can't seem to find it on the PMP class website.
You go to your
if you go to the
invite?
If you go to the invite, yeah, they should have that. I thought he had that out there.
On the invite, okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you go to the invite here, let me share my screen real fast. And
I can go there.
And if it's here, yes, I got to finish sharing my screen. So if you go to can you see my screen now? Oh, there it goes. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
It's this wiki right here.
That one,
and
okay.
then it's below the actually it'll come up. Then we have the June class.
Okay.
And we have the PDF of the PowerPoints. We have there's a spreadsheet I talked about last time actually. And then the recording, and he's keeping us up to date here, so we'll probably have that recording in probably tomorrow.
So where is that PowerPoint that we were just covering? Where is
it's the PDF. It's the PDF. It's a PowerPoint. It says PPT there. That's the document that we're using.
Okay, and we're on number 2, right?
Number 2 today, yes. That is correct. Okay, so any other questions regarding the material we covered today? That would probably be the best place to start here. Any questions at all about the material we covered today?
I don't have a question regarding the material as much as can you call up the exam content outline where exactly because I've been looking at the PMI.
Sure, let me do this real fast here.
Thank you.
It takes a second here, but let's go. So, eventually here. Here. Oh, the WebEx thing gets in my way there. So when you go to the PMI login, now I actually have a PMI login that you don't have to have one. I mean, you don't have to be a member to get to this part, but I do, but it should be the same. So if you go and you can do a search, and if you do the ECO, you can look at the ECO 2021, and let's see here. Let's see. In here, I would look under the exam preparation. This is probably where they have it. And so it says 2021 PMP exam content outlines, and you can just download, and I do English, but if you prefer something else,
excellent,
use that. And then
Thank
you'll
you.
go through here, and then they talk about you'll see like 3.1 dot something or whatever. These are the things here. So you have domain 1, so it's 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and so forth. These are the different things that are going to be on the exam. And and the domain 2, it's 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and so forth. So when you see those, you can go look at this. I don't know how much that actually helps you with your exam material. It might help you process it a little better, putting it into place. But and this is the rest of the stuff too. You guys probably should have already looked at these things as far as the eligibility requirements. So if you haven't, it's a good time to well, actually the best time would be before you took the class, but you might start looking at that now. So does anybody have any more questions about the ECO stuff?
What browser are you using? Using Firefox?
This one was Chrome, but I believe it
okay.
works in Chrome, and I believe it works in Firefox and Microsoft. I think it's pretty.
In Explorer, I seem to be having a problem getting to search to show me that.
Oh, well, I did it in Chrome, so it's
okay, I'll try it there.
Yeah,
I'll try it there.
I use Chrome most of the time here.
As an FYI, I use Chrome all the time, and I cannot get into some of the documentation off of PMI, even though I have a login. I have to go through Firefox.
Oh, well, it works for me. I don't know what my settings are that are different, but if you can try them all, I guess, whichever one works for you.
The other comment I have real quick, I don't want to hold up the class too much, but you know what? Since we were told that 90 some odd % of the material, the questions are going to be situational, a lot of the presentations that you're showing us, if you can possibly, not I understand the reading part just to draw our attention to it, but I think that some of it is not really straightforward in terms of, the point that they're trying to make. So as we're trying to, envision and craft, get our arms around the material, I'd ask if you can kind of like go off script sometimes, like you did. And
well, and I do that. I do that a lot, and I've been doing this for a long time, though. I've been doing this for 7 years now. One of the things besides that, though, and I will point this out, and Luke will, I'm pretty sure, validate me on this one, is the questions that we have on the exam are primarily situational questions. And I think the best way to prepare for that is to take lots of sample tests, take lots and lots of exams. Luke took the test, and he had one of the sites. I don't know if Brian put it onto the wiki yet. Do I have the wiki one on here? Let me. I don't know if I have it. I don't know if he added it yet or not. But Luke sent it out in the last class as well. The link for that. And Luke, if you don't mind putting it in the chat again for that, the test, the prep test site.
Yep. Give me 1 minute. I'll put it in there.
On these exam questions, a lot of them are just brutal, and you don't know what you're looking for. I mean, when I first started, and this was just for the old exam, now it's probably worse. But when I first started out, some of the test questions that I took totally had me baffled until I saw the question, and then I saw the answer, and I saw how they answered the question and the logic they used to answer the question, and it starts to fall into place. I don't believe there's any substitute for those practice exams. I highly recommend that you do that. And I don't know how many of them are out there now on the web that are for free. The one that Luke is talking about, I think, was like $100 to $150. But those test questions are invaluable, and some of them are brutal online. When I was taking the test for the other exam, I think some of those were deliberately made to be brutal because the people who had the free sample test out there were trying to get you to buy their test prep. And so they wanted you to fail because, hey, you look at this and you see these brutal questions, you go, oh my God, I need these people to help me. But it was great. It was good practice, and it was good experience, and you'll learn to think in those situations. It's hard to codify those things, and it's hard to test. It's hard to teach how to solve those. It's more of an experiential thing. You had to see it and do it lots of times to kind of build up a framework. I tell people all the time, on the original test that I took back in 2014, they asked questions about ethics. There was only a few of them, but the questions were they were actually simple. If you could get it out of your mind, you could just think in pure brutal terms, what the right thing to do, as long as you knew the difference between good and evil, right and wrong. You almost never could get those questions right, but they made the wrong answer so damn attractive and so real life. I would probably do that even. So when you get these questions, you're going to look at those and you're going to say, your gut's going to take over, and you're going to answer it wrong. You gotta think purely in what they're talking about. And Luke gave an example last week, one particular type of question that they had. And you'll see lots of those things out there. You're going to see questions that if you never looked at that question, first time you take it, you're probably going to get it wrong, or you may get it wrong, which is why you want to take these exam questions over and over and over again. Maybe not the same ones, or maybe even the same ones. Anything to help reinforce how they ask those questions and what they're looking for when you take those exam questions.
Matt, I think you pointed out something really good last week. Don't just look at the questions that you got wrong. Look at the questions you got right, and make sure you understand why you got them right. Don't just remember the question or remember a scenario and think that's the answer. It's just as important to know why you got it right as why you got it wrong.
Right, and that's another thing too. You always understand why you got the question right, because sometimes it's just dumb luck. You thought you understood it, and that you passed it on the practice exam, but it may not be the same on the real exam. So you want to do that too. And the questions in the site that Luke that's going to put on the chat room if he hasn't already, that he was saying that those questions were very, very reflective of what was on the exam. So just not the, I don't know the site. I don't have any investment in them. So I'm just, Luke is right primarily is right now is the one person I know that I've actually talked to. I mentored him in the last session, and he did well in what he says. I take for gospel right now on that. So I highly recommend that if it's not that one, you get another one. Be careful with the Exam Wizard, because I think Exam Wizard is still geared to the old test, a lot of it. The folks that I've talked to about it, some of the questions that are coming out of there sound a lot like the old test. So careful with the Exam Wizard. I don't know if you've used Exam Wizard at all, Luke, but just I would be careful about that when I don't know that we have actually vetted it for the new exam.
Yeah, I mean, the Exam Wizard for me was more definition driven, whereas at least the simulator I used was very situational. Granted, it was probably half and half predictive and agile. I know they continuously update it, but that's why I supplemented with other agile study resources like the practice guide and other things. So just be aware of that. But it puts you in the mindset of a project manager and what you should do in that specific scenario. And a lot of the questions a lot of the answers look, very similar. It could be the right answer, but there is only one right answer, and that's what you train your mind to know what that is, or at least narrow it down to two.
Yep. And to the initial question, I do riff a lot, and one of the reasons why I do that is because I am very, very familiar with the underlying principles, and I'm good with analogies and creating analogies to those solutions, or to those problems, and that's the important thing. And I try to emphasize that in the other classes and in this one. It's try to put yourself in the project. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Why is this good? Why is this bad? Understand what's supposed to be happening and why what's supposed to be happening is a good thing. That will help you get through some of these situational questions as well. If you understand the process, not just memorize the details, because you might not get all the details on the exam. And if you don't understand what's all happening in that particular process, you could end up getting hosed even though you memorized 90% of the details. So memorizing the details is backseat to understanding what the process is supposed to be doing. Okay, any other questions? We got actually, before we go any further, we got 35 minutes left here. We are actually covered the material. If you want to drop, feel free to do that. I'm going to stay on here until 7. I don't know about Luke and Tracy, but I'll be here till 7, so we can answer questions, ask questions, or whatever for this time frame. So anybody else have questions right now?
I do. Activities that are out in the book, who and when are we supposed to be doing those? Like, I'm going to complete activity 1-5 today at the end of the day, just because I want to try and stay up on it. But I know that we said that we would have assignments and whatnot. Is this a part of the assignments that we need to handle before next class?
Well, here's what I recommend is that that you do the activities in the, let me bring it up here on my screen here. This is actually in the, let's just go to the negotiate project agreements here, and they have activities out there. This is the instructor guide. So, but yeah, I think here's the questions. I don't want to show you the answers, but hopefully you won't just remember them. What are the main sections of the deliverables agreements? What are the key components? What you expect to see in each section? Knowing those kinds of things, this is good. I mean, here again, answers will vary, but should reflect the core guidelines for analyzing the bounds of a project. You feel free to do all of these in advance. What I kind of was, and I unfortunately, last session we didn't really cover this too much in our mentoring because I didn't have that many people show up, and Luke was one of the few people that was always there. But if you ask your mentor to go over these things with you, and if you have more than, if you have a few people on your mentoring group, to kind of discuss those. That's good because you can sit down and folks can talk about this, and you can as long as you stick to the as long as you stick to the answers, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this politely here. We had instructors who they would ask questions and somebody would answer, and their answer would be completely wrong, but they gave a good reason why they had the answer, and he would say good job, and like, well, no, that's not really the answer though. And so you just make sure you're keeping yourself honest when you're going through this stuff. When you're talking about this one here, client has a long list of requirements, blah, blah, blah. The answers may include the Kano model, Moscow analysis, paired comparison, 100-point method. If they come up with something different, and it's a method of prioritizing your backlog, and then it's a good answer. If somebody comes up with something that doesn't prioritize the backlog, but it has something to do, and you can explain what that other thing doesn't make it right. So just if you do this in a group, it's great. I mean, that's what these were meant for, is to be handled and answered in a group. But you feel free to go through these on your own, especially if your mentoring session isn't covering those. But that was kind of the plan, was that the mentors would go over these. But I can say I didn't, because we didn't really have folks in, and they weren't really that interested. Luke wasn't really that interested in doing those with us at the time. So, and he was like one of the few people showed, if any of them showed. So, yeah. Talk to your mentors about and ask those. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Matthew. I was just going to ask you, where are these can we find these questions? I haven't come across.
These are in your handbook. This is the instructor handbook. You guys have a handbook in the that will be in your portal thing, your bundle. So have you been reading you should be reading this. I'm sorry.
It's in the ebook, yeah, in the PMI website.
Yep, you have to go. That's the one that you have to use the Firefox browser to get into that low PMO or something like that.
And I hate to say this right now. I don't want to mean to point fingers or call you out on this, but you guys should be reading this book already. You should be really getting into this stuff and staying on top of this material. Just an FYI, I know everybody gets busy and stuff, but this is something you should be reading. So if you guys don't know where these questions are, get that handbook out in the bundle and start reading it. And I don't have access to the bundle, so I don't know exactly where it is, but you can talk with each other. You guys should be able to find that out there. And if you still can't, I can get Brian to do that. I'm sorry?
If you allow me to share content, I can show where it is.
You can do that. That would be great. I would appreciate that.
Matthew, while she's doing, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think part of the issue is we were told what to go purchase, but not really how to utilize any of it prior to these training sessions.
I would agree.
Well, let's go there, and we'll see what we can help you guys with now while we're at it here. So we're not super far in yet, so maybe we can still make a difference here.
I logged into the PMI loadchoice.com, and this is what comes up when you're on your home browser. I clicked on the PMI authorized exam prep, and then it gives me these beautiful, nifty little tabs. Student manual.
Yep.
And then you've got the choice online reader, the PM exam prep student PDF, which I have this one up because I'm taking it to the printer to have it printed. Because as much as I love reading and seeing stuff online, it's way better when I can have it in my hot little hands.
Yeah, so, I found that it's easier to read the PDF version, for me anyway, than it was the online version, because the print you can zoom it and makes it bigger. Yeah, but they're exactly the same.
So I will let you guys decide on that, but those are two of the same documents. One is an online reader, one is a PDF, it looks like. So
this is what the reader looks like.
And so that handbook you guys should be reading, and you should be all the way through the material we've covered there. If you're reading all the way up to the empowered team members and stakeholders, you guys will be fine. Okay, and then if you want to go the next chapters up, you can start answering those questions as well. but all these scenarios, you should look at these scenarios. Ask your mentor to go over those scenarios with you. If you're not getting it, or ask them to go over it anyway, even if you think you are getting it. Work them as a team if you can. If you can't, I mean, that's the kind of the point of the whole agile thing is you do things as a team. So I think it's geared that way. I'm just looking at again, I have the instructor guide, so I got that. But anyway, if you want to go back now, and then let's see if we can see some of the other material that you got out there.
Well, those are really the only two links that I've investigated, is the home link, the student manual, and then
so they have the
the
course files. If you go down to the course files, I believe that it actually has, and you can open I guess yeah, this is the zip file. And in here, you'll have all of the PowerPoints in here. They do not break them down like we break them down. So if you see, we have doing the work, starting the project, and I don't know what the blank forms and templates. Those are probably things like go ahead and doing the work right now. You can click on that. And you'll see there's they have different ones that are in here. Let's see here. Oh, actually, that's not it. They have the power. That's not it. There's a power. You guys should have the PowerPoints in there. I don't know exactly where those are. These are just documents that you guys could be using. Is it the H drive? Is that what you have there? Is that all your H drive? I didn't see all of your zip file. I know they're in there somewhere.
It just questions and doesn't ever do anything properly. So course files.
Look at the course file thing here, because I'm thinking there's. So if you go to the top one, the ATP PMP1 data. Let's click on.
I do remember those guides, the PowerPoints that you're talking about. They're labeled as module 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm trying to walk through to remember how I downloaded them, as I have that. We'll share in case you guys.
If you go back to the orange box where you were before.
Student manual or post class?
Yes, student manual. Then on the updated handout notes, there's PowerPoint in there.
I think so.
Oh, well, there we go. Let's open those up and let's take a look and see, and then I would tell you. I broke them all out into smaller chunks here, but
yep.
Yeah, there they are. Yep, that's it. And these are all in PDFs, but so like one is the creating high performing teams, and then 2 will be, I forget what the second chapter is called now, but anyway, that's all in there. So you can look at they're just PDFs of them, but you can look at those. Are probably easier to look at in PDF format anyway. So
yeah,
you'll be able to see the material that we just talked about. So anyway, so if you guys have questions, so there you go. That's where the material is. So that's in those notes, the handouts, updated note handouts. So that's primarily the stuff you need. Feel free to browse through all of that material though that they've got in there. I don't know how much of it. I don't have access to these, so I can't see it, but it's there for you. And if it's out there, it's probably a good read. Like the forms and templates, I don't think you're going to actually have questions on forms and templates, so it won't help you pass the exam, I don't think. But looking at a form or template might help you understand what you're doing when you're creating a stakeholder register. You can see the columns of the questions that, the things that you're filling in about all of the stakeholders. That kind of help you get an understanding of the material and what you're trying to do when you create that stakeholder register. So, and the questions you can answer based on the stakeholder register. Like my stakeholder register is actually very, very detailed when I do them. I get a lot of stuff out there. I actually have 2 stakeholder registers that I use on a project. I have one that I keep for myself that I don't publish because sometimes you've got stakeholders who are, how shall we say, difficult to work with. So I make notes about that kind of stuff for myself, so I know down the road that, hey, this guy this guy's not going to like to hear bad news. So you when you got to give him bad news, you got to do it a different way, kind of
The
stuff.
phone.
I'm sorry.
By phone.
Well, almost everything's by phone now or by whatever. But I'm just saying, you have stakeholder. This is just project management stuff, not on the exam. And on the exam, that would actually be a wrong answer. Again, transparency is important, but you don't want to tell a customer or a client or stakeholder that you're a troublemaker. So I documented that, and I'm going to deal with you this way. Transparency to a certain degree is good, but obviously some things you are better left unsaid. But I put notes down there because I don't remember, especially on big projects, because they have lots of stakeholders or lots of projects, and I have lots of people, and I don't want to get them mixed up. So,
Matthew, I have an administrative question. You may or may not be able to answer this, but how and when do we get assigned mentors?
Well, actually, I thought you had that done now. I just changed jobs. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have an answer to that. Yeah,
that's great.
I emailed about that, and I was told we should have it by the end of this week. The mentors assigned.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, normally they would be assigned before we get started, but I know there's always a glitch. So I unfortunately am not doing mentoring this time around because I just changed my job here, so I'm drinking from a fire hose as it is. I don't want to shortchange you guys out there. So, but yeah, I'll reach out to Pam actually, make sure that that's on track, and I'll be teaching the class Wednesday too, so I'll let you know.
And if you're really worried about it, you can go to the PMI Network website and request a mentor. I did that last week at the end of our session on Wednesday, and got an email on Thursday, Friday saying who my mentor was and that she's trying to actively plan stuff for us to do. Just haven't come out with anything additional.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so any other questions, administrative or otherwise, particularly about the material we covered today?
So there's a great
yesterday.
There's a great question. Yeah, there's a great question in the chat about on the exam, how do you know if it's a predictive question or an agile question? The question will almost always tell you what it is. So they will say in an agile environment or on an agile team, a team member joined the team, or you are changing from a predictive environment to an agile environment. What do you do? So it will tell you what methodology you should use when answering the question. So just keep that in mind.
So that's good too. Speaking of the chat, I noticed there was another question in there. I think confused on the topics like Moscow. I do not see it in the PMBOK or the Andy study guide. Is that in the Agile guide? I'm thinking it is. But I could be mistaken on that. And some of these things you might just need to, if you read your study guide and you don't understand or you can't find any more information on it, you can Google it, get an idea. Now,
I saw it in the Andy guide.
You saw it in the Andy guide?
Yeah.
Do you remember where? I maybe just haven't read it yet, but I've been following with the Andy and PMBOK on.
Hang on. I saw it this weekend. I'll look for it and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. And just a FYI, that I don't know. I'm thinking that the Andy Crow book and the Readable K book still follow the PMBOK as far as the order goes, and maybe I don't know if Luke, if you can clarify that or not. I don't have the new Andy Crow book. That's the one I had, and it followed the PMBOK chapter by chapter. And the thing is, the problem with that is that we're not following the PMBOK chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. They were kind of spread out. I talked about that last Wednesday, and you guys can check that spreadsheet and see what topics actually were covered from the PMBOK in these particular decks that we have out there. So if it's not in the PMBOK, which I can't recall whether it is or not, but You can
Yes,
you can
I've
look
been
these things up.
following your Excel sheet that you outlined. So along with the PDF reading, I've been reading,
Okay.
I guess, like in the PMBOK and Andy guide as well. I just thought it was interesting that I hadn't come across that topic in either of those books. I don't know. I know you asked it to Lucas at one point. Is it in, I haven't read the Agile Practice Guide. Is it in that one by chance? Because it is more of an Agile topic.
I am looking briefly right now. It is an agile, like Moscow is an agile term, so it probably would not appear in the PMBOK.
Okay.
And just an FYI, I would start reading that Agile book too. And unfortunately I don't have it broken down in the spreadsheet, and that's probably something I need to do for the next class. And maybe I can get it done for the rest of this class. But I recommend that you start reading that. Again, Luke said that that's a lot of stuff from the Agile guide is on the exam. So it's good.
It's an easy read too. It's only it's not that hard of a read compared to the PMBOK.
So in order of reading, okay, I've got like 3 different books that I'm attempting to read in order to continue to stay up to pace on your guys' course, not including the new reader that I'm printing out online. Is it really necessary for me to read all 4 of these materials? I mean, I know the Agile guide is...
What are the 4 books you're talking about, first of all?
The PMBOK, I have Rita's, not Andy's, the small Agile guide, the one that's online, and then we have a few other websites that have Agile related material.
Yes, you need all of those then. I do tell people ask about Rita and Andy, and you don't need to do both, but yeah, you should do one.
So I will just tell you, this was just my study approach, just mine and mine alone. That I bought the Andy Crow book, the old version, not the new version, as really just for the predictive side. The PMBOK was extremely dry. I could not comprehend the PMBOK. I used the PMBOK as a reference only if I was reading the Andy Crow book and a term came up that I needed more clarification about. Then I looked it up in the PMBOK. I did not read the PMBOK cover to cover. The Andy Crow book puts things in